Hello, everybody. This is Rebecca Freedom, and today we're going to be talking about how to get unstuck on episode 12 of Heard Not Seen, produced by John Beethan. So, this is a oldie but goodie, because how often do you get stuck? Like every day in some form or another, if you really think about it. There can be a repetitive thought, or you're literally stuck in traffic if you live in any metropolis anywhere and want to get anywhere at any point of the day besides like 4 a.m. There's the literal stuck and the emotional stuck. So we're going to go through all the ways to get unstuck over the course of this podcast. So John, when you think of like those moments of being stuck, like what does it bring up for you? What does that conjure when you're like, ugh, stuckness?
Stuckness, what conjures up for me? Just not feeling resourced. Mm-hmm. Lack of resource. It's like, what do I do? There's nothing motivating me. I'm not inspired to do anything. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there can be a lethargy to it. Mm-hmm. I often, I know for me, it's frenetic confusion. So... where you start spinning your wheels of like, what can I do next? What other thing can I do to like eviscerate this bad feeling that I have? And sometimes I grab a Snickers.
Oh yeah, that's good.
And then sometimes other people grab a drink, grab alcohol or a hooker or whatever, like to the degree of stuckness.
Yeah, is that a little bit of trying to numb it a little bit? Because when you talk about alcohol, it's a little bit about numbing from my perspective. It
can be, but we often hear in the addiction field, which I've worked in, it's just the escape, right? It's the... I was just watching a documentary on meth in the gay community, and it was almost like, oh my God, I can't believe you're doing Molly. You should be doing like crystal. Where's Tina? Tina is like a code term for meth, just like Molly is for MDMA. And there's lots of different street, like boomers as mushrooms and so on and so forth. So when they were on the documentary, they were talking about like, it's the great escape. You feel all your worries about sex and your body and your anxiety, and especially the stigmas around being gay. All of that just disappears and you feel like Superman. You feel amazing. But you have this ADD thing that goes on because you're on meth, and you are like, all these things start going wrong and you're like, I can't believe the things that happen to me. It's incredible. Why me? Why me? So it's almost like the only way out is through. And that would be my first tip for getting unstuck.
So how do you go through?
Yeah.
That's the question.
How to do that? Breathing is a really simple step, honestly, is just being the mover that moves. And deciding to be like, all right, I'll take a deep breath. I can take a deep breath. And that quality of being able to do that gets you in touch with decision. All circumstances arrive. I think we said this last week. It's not what's happening to you. It's happening for you. It's happening for you. So... And I can hear the objections already, right? The objections of like, well, what about if you're raped? Or what if you live in a village that's being bombed? Or what if there's some apocalyptic thing like you're under the tyrannical reign of Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton or something like that? As a caveat, when you spell Hillary out, if you're very clever, you'll see right in the middle of her name, it says liar.
Oh.
Just FYI. So, okay, so I'm going to bring politics into this apparently today. The only way out is through. And the second level of that would be that when you look towards a figure, an authority figure outside of yourself, a talisman, if you will, or a false god or idol, for those Christians listening, when you look at that as this is my shining light, then you are disempowered. And one of the ways to go through is to say, I am sovereign. I am sovereign. Sovereignty meaning that I am endowed with all the will and power to be able to create and live the life that is meant for me. Not necessarily the life that you want or you think you should have, but the destiny that's meant for you. So, yeah, so part of this process is reaching out to your brother or sister, and we're all in this together, and to say like, hey, what if we just formed a collective power, and we are the grassroots movement that changes things from the ground up, that we stop sucking from the tit of the government, and we maybe come up with different systems. And it's happening. It
is happening.
It's, yeah. You've lived in New Mexico, and so you were speaking of like the artists and the different off mic. We were talking about that, the consciousness that's there. I know Sedona is a epicenter for that. So how did you witness it sort of happening in that area of the nation? The sort of grassroots, like in this together, new paradigm.
My experience in New Mexico was that a lot of people would be pretty much on their own. There's not, the strongest community is that of the Latino community because it's matriarchal by nature. And it was like, Sundays, pretty much the town shut down. And so it was families, 20 people, 30 people. Okay. So there wasn't a lot of organization. People just came together. Okay. And there was a strong community of golden-tongued wisdom there. People that had retired from Colorado, from New York, from Chicago, from LA, from other parts because they wanted to be in Santa Fe for the quality of life and the kind of people that were there. And there was a strong spirit there. So a lot of times people would move there and basically New Mexico would spit them out if they had their own sort of get-ahead agenda. But when they came together with like-minded spiritual, something greater than themselves, wanting to be a part of a unified perspective, then, they had a wonderful life. And people would come together.
It's such a beautiful and poetic way to say it, a unified perspective. And I wouldn't say necessarily that's utopia, because contrast is a powerful force for us to be able to say what can we unify around? Here's our diversity, and can we unify around that diversity, be an allowance of it? Ojai, and right outside of Santa Barbara is also like that. It's called the Nest, and it is feminine energy, and there's the I think the St. Thomas Aquinas College is out there. It's a liberal arts college. It teaches in the Socratic method. It's like gorgeous. The campus is gorgeous, and it's somewhere that celebrities go to get out of LA. There's a resort there, but the energy of that, and Miners Oaks is right over from it. It had somewhere called the Farmer and the Cook. And it was one of my favorite places to go because it was all right off the farms that were surrounding Ojai. And the energy there truly is like, if you haven't dealt with it, you're going to deal with it here. My experience was I left Colorado to get away from my ex. I was like, I'm not living in the same state as you. And then I just met him and a different guy, same deadbeat energy. And I talked about the guy I got in trouble with in a previous podcast prior in the Ojai area. And yeah, it was just like, it just threw it in your face. It was just like, whatever. There's
no way to get around it. You had to go through it.
It was just right. Yeah. And there's different, I think, vortices and in different parts of the nation, and different communities like this, Portland, Asheville, Ashland, obviously Encinitas area here in California, South Dakota, actually, surprisingly, the Black Hills
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
is super powerful. As far as a progressive thought out there, I think it's there. It's just spoken in a different way. And if people are really, truly connecting to the native...
And you lived there for a while, right?
I did. I lived in Custer, which was a town of 2,000.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. So you'd hear the blasting from Crazy Horse every once in a while. And people would be like, let's go collect the rocks. It's like, why? Why? So I'm just thinking about people who are listening right now. And I would say that the top 3 energies that represent stuckness are depression, anxiety, and narcissism. As everybody, please put your phone down as you're taking a selfie. And listen, I'm like the queen of selfies, so I know, okay?
It's actually really true. All you got to do is go to Facebook and you'll find out that's absolutely true.
I'm like, I wore makeup today. Everybody should see it. Yay. But I want to talk about narcissism, not in the pop culture sense of it, but in the disorder, the DSM-5 model disorder. It's a book of both mood disorders and personality disorders, also behavioral disorders that will come from medical issues, things like that. People have taken years to catalog all of these. Just like in the medical field, there's a difference between benign cancer and malignant. Same sort of comparison can be drawn psychologically speaking. So without having my DSM in front of me, I would say a narcissist is wounded in so many different areas: abandonment, lack of care. It's almost like borderline personality disorder on crack, because borderline is like half psychotic, half neurotic. So psychosis, delusional about the reality that's actually unfolding, and then the neuroses inside. And again, I will add a link below this about the definition of neuroses, because although I've been in practice for 5 years, sometimes I have a hard time pulling in the definition for that, besides being told I'm neurotic. And, when it's almost like an impending doom feeling. Mm-hmm. So narcissism is a trap if you're living in it, because if you're interacting with a person that's a narcissist, you can't please them. They're superior, but they're also looking to improve you with their superiority, but they'll feign inferiority just to sort of like look and play on your playing field. Like literally every human behavior that would have a reciprocal response is just sucked in. Narcissism like sucks the oxygen out of the room, really. It doesn't matter how you interact. And they're often very intelligent. People who have narcissistic personality disorder are charming, intelligent, demonstrative. They can have a little megalomania to the degree.
Nice.
Yeah. And so, but it's a trap. It's a trap to like live in that narcissistic sort of space.
So who is it a trap for?
I really think to the degree that so much of the behaviors that are occurring are like a fish in water. The narcissist is just used to it. Mm-hmm. That it's a trap for the soul. Mm-hmm. Honestly, there are there's schema, there's treatment for narcissism, and the only way out is through. So it's in the acknowledgement. It's like in the first step of the 12 steps. Own it, acknowledge it. I am powerless over this. There's almost an addictive quality to the rightness, to the black and white thinking, to this or that, or the dictate, the manipulation, the control, the dictation of forcing things. There can be a rageful quality that comes off of it. So relationally and personally, narcissism, I would say, is the most grandiose of stuck places.
It actually makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And so what I would say is that that there's a counterpoint to narcissism, and it's codependency. And I'm not going to really go far into that. Pia Mellody is one of the great authors of Codependent No More. And she is the one to reference for a greater understanding of codependency.
We'll include it in the show notes as well.
Yeah, we'll get it in the notes. But there's a balance. There's sort of like the yin and the yang for it, right? You be weak and small so I can be big and grandiose. But why aren't you meeting me in my big and grandiose? Maybe I'll go be weak and small and dependent. And the cycle goes. And the drama triangle continues. The perpetrator, the victim, and the rescuer. All those roles start being played. Look, I'm so good and altruistic because I'm rescuing. You're not meeting me where I'm at. The perpetrator and the victim being like, I just can't give you what you need. I just, whatever. That's relationally a cycle of being stuck and being trapped in that place. I'd also like to add, there's this cute little thing, I think it's adorable, called spiritual narcissism. Cocaine Buddhists is the nickname that it was given for this particular caricature in Boulder, Colorado, where I lived for some time. And that you're super like, I'm so zen, let's do a line.
Really?
So, and it's not literal. It's just sort of, again, a caricature of the characteristics. Meaning my spirituality is better than your spirituality. I'm more spiritual. I'm more studied in Ken Wilber than, Byron Katie or whatever. It's like you start name dropping. Yeah. You're name dropping your gurus.
Yeah.
Paramahansa Yogananda, which he's legit, some really good stuff. He brought yoga to the States, so yay for that. But it kind of gets into a pissing war about like, I got Lululemons on instead of Champion, like, and the material and the spiritual, and the lines get really a bit blurry. So I would say the other place we get so stuck, I'd like an E for 100. I'll solve the puzzle, please. It's ego. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. You get a car. The vehicle is your ego. So, brought to you by Ford. So that's another place we get so hung up is right. Ego. And I really, really like the stories that ego tells when you're anxious, and the stories that ego tells when you're depressed, right? Mm-hmm. And your body will cooperate. That's the most amazing part of it, where your body is like, yeah, cool, we'll go ahead and be depressed. Or yeah, cool, we'll go ahead and act anxious, get ADD. Or just...
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. So, okay. I bet people out there listening can sort of guess what it looks like when your ego's running the show when you're depressed. But because I can't talk to you, I'm just going to spell it out. But when you've been depressed, because we all get in those states, are you sort of aware of what your ego does to you when you're in that depressed place? Like if you kind of reflect back on that sort of energy, what does that bring up for you?
If you're asking me?
Yes.
My ego has a tendency to beat me up.
Mm-hmm.
Did I nail it?
Yes.
Great.
He's going home with a car named Ego, brought to you by Ford.
Can I have a blue one, please?
Yeah, of course you can. Not an actual endorsement.
Metallic blue?
Sparkly. Bumper car blue.
Tesla would be okay, too.
Yeah. I don't think they are ego. I think they're more like super consciousness.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Sidebar. Yeah, so your ego beats you up. It's the critic that comes in and it's like, you're not good enough and you're never going to measure up and you're failing and you're going to just Mine wants me to be a stripper. It's like the weirdest thing. It's like when I'm like going down depression highway, it's like, well, great. Now you're just going to have to go strip because no one's ever going to want to talk to you again. I don't know where that comes from. It's definitely not in the family lineage that I know of. Can consult some people down the road. Oh, they were wild. They were wild enough to categorically have that be sort of a familial pattern. So yeah, you get the critic beating you up. Anxiety on the other end, when you're just like, what would your guess be about ego?
Anxiety?
Yeah, how your ego acts when you're anxious.
Yeah. Anxious to me is nervous about the future.
Mm-hmm.
To me, ego's rushing.
Mm-hmm.
Rushing into something that you have no control over.
Clamoring for certainty.
Yes, very well put.
Yeah.
Clamoring for certainty.
Yeah.
Nice.
I just need to know.
Yeah.
But I don't need to know. Actually, I need my point of view validated.
Right.
My way or the highway, you know? And this, oh man. And that kind of is a really great, you see narcissism, that's not great in that, yay, good, but it's like a great large quality of the narcissistic personality too. It's like my way or the highway.
Right.
And so the cure, let's talk a little bit about the pivot point for all of this. And more of, I'm going to give, before we go there, I want to give some specific examples. Like when you're in a place, a crossroads of like, do I change my job? Do I quit it? I hate my boss. I'm not making enough money. I know a lot of the coaching community goes through the, do I raise my prices? What do I raise? Am I just really worth that number? Is that my value? Is that, I'm just like, no, bitch, it's what you need to get paid to pay your bills. It's like,
right.
Like,
Right.
Okay.
Right.
It's like, we all have self-esteem issues because what is self-esteem but this like ambiguous and sort of ambivalent concept of love yourself and feel good about yourself. I honestly think the best self-love is when you're just like oneness, when you connect with oneness, when you're just like, oh yeah, dude, me too. Yeah.
Well, for me, it's usually just accepting whatever is going on.
Yeah. Acceptance. And acceptance is sort of synonymous with forgiveness too. Abandoning the hope that the past could have been any different than it was. You just, that's the thing about your body is it will live the residuals of the past. So you made some choices to drink last night. Well, you're going to feel the residuals of that today. You have a healthy diet and you're exercising and you're having good sex. You're going to feel the residuals of that. And your body is sort of a little bit of like a walking mausoleum for your choices. You know, it's just like, and this ring of the tree, well, that was my cocaine year. But right after that, juice cleanse, India, juice cleanse, you know, whatever. And we go through these periods. It's also really interesting because you can sort of age gracefully, physically, and it's so dependent on your thoughts. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he.
I know that to be true.
Yeah. Say more.
Real simple. I, based on my conversations with people, if I've never met them, I'm on the phone with them. You know, they're, I'll just say my age is 63, but most people don't guess me over 51, 52.
Winning.
Yeah. No, it's just, you know, because I don't, I stay young.
Yeah.
In my mind.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And
then of course my mind goes, are you sure that's not immaturity?
Ego pulling into the driveway. Yeah. Okay. So aging, another place we get all hung up about things, right? Am I lovable? Am I fuckable? Am I going to be able to do what I want? And oh man, it's one of the most humbling places too. When you get a cold, like we all turn into 5-year-old kids that are like, I just want my mom. I just want some cookies with my mom. Can we watch Sesame Street or a porn? Whatever. I just want my mom. When you're sick or really sick and then you have the medical field taking care of you, right? It is a humbling place to be. So humbling. And it brings you back to the basics.
I've had that happen too.
Yeah. Powerful moment it unsticks a lot.
No, as we're talking about it, certain health situation I had in 2009, I found myself woke up in a hospital, family surrounding me, and obviously my life had just changed. So as I'm thinking about it right now, I'm bringing it back into this space, and I'm feeling that humility as well.
Yeah.
Again.
So I think about that. I think about like the patterns we get stuck in that contribute to that like diminishment of health, or the patterns, the habits we get stuck in that promote it, right? And the leverage between the two is what your thoughts are, what you're thinking. So, so extend it out for health, and then your creative sphere, your job, sort of like how you're showing up in the world. And then out from there, the relationships you're having, like family, friends, sex, lovers, partners, the plethora, the menagerie of relationships, and sort of the all-encompassing Oz is God, religion, your spiritual practice, how you're connecting to the all that is, everything, oneness, and then self right in the middle of that, all of that. So if you look at it like rings of a tree, you can get stuck in any one of those. And the great and powerful cure is nothing that's going to shock anybody, is your thoughts are things. Your thoughts are things. So if you are experiencing a mood disorder or a personality disorder, if your psychology is stretched really far out into those extremes, of course, in Western medicine, pharmacology is one of the first lines of defense to try to access self again. But honestly, you know what? The body heals itself. And this is why psychotherapy exists, is because the relationship with the therapist gives you free rein to just like show up however you are, and then explore what else is possible. Like repurposing. So, okay, so yay, let's get on, like, I'm going to bullet point the unstuck, and then if you have anything to throw in, I invite you to do that, John and listeners, about some techniques you've used to get unstuck, to make the decision about the job or the relationship or your health or whatever else. Let's do a plug for your the hydrogen, right?
Well, yeah, molecular hydrogen.
Molecular hydrogen. This is like a really cool.
Some people calling it supplement of the decade, but that little hydrogen molecule is the smallest one in the universe. About 72% of the universe is hydrogen. So it's not man-made, although we can make it, but it exists everywhere. So it's just like one of those wonderful things that has a brain of its own that only goes after the bad free radicals. It's just like, it's like if you're on a street and you see like 100 people, how do you know who the bad ones are? Well, the molecular hydrogen knows who the bad ones are. It basically neutralizes them, turning them back into water.
And again, if you want to know more, we'll put a link in the show notes.
Sure.
But I found it to the most noticeable part of using this, and I'm saying, there's different tools to get unstuck. Supplements are one of those, and this hydrogen supplement was really interesting in that when I drink coffee, it's so acidic. And I drink that, and my body would feel
you haven't told me about
really
this
good.
Yeah,
it would feel like it would feel lighter, more energized. But I'm one of those people that's sucky at sticking to like a
regime.
A regime. Yeah. But if you do, like, obviously that will be the thing to
But don't you have
results.
a regime in the morning where you wake up at 5:30 and don't get out of bed till 7? That's a regime.
That's called being lazy. That's called demotivation. And again, that can be a totally stuck place. So one of the places to get unstuck is to humble yourself and ask for help. Of course, the medical field exists for that reason. And there's so many different amazing supplements that are really ushering in a new technology, hydrogen being one of them. And again, at the core of this is just choose to ask for help, choose to extend yourself beyond your comfort zone and explore different things. Know that your body has an intelligence. And I would say one of the ways to measure that really well is through kinesiology or muscle testing. And there's several chiropractors and practitioners that are well versed in that. So if you're deciding to do NAET, which is for allergens or different things like that, if you're going to go the supplement route, I encourage you to make sure that you're working with a practitioner that can muscle test you on that so that it's tailored to your body.
Can I say something about that too? Well, of course I can.
Of course.
The mic's on. So here's the other thing in the level of awareness I've come to or becoming to, which is muscle testing is fine and dandy and stuff like that. But for God's sakes, people, just feel your body. Just ask your body. Just quite frankly, open up your heart center, and ask the body what it feels. So that's how I don't do muscle testing on stuff, but I will try stuff for 2 or 3 days and simply, how do I feel?
Amazing.
Yeah. I mean, muscle testing is good, but I also encourage people to, how do you feel? If you're going to experiment with hydrogen or any other supplement or a new relationship, or some new position in your life, then just how do you feel about it? Your body never lies.
And we're volleying back and forth. Caveat: ground yourself and then ask, because sometimes you can feel, again, that confused, frenetic place, and it's hard to decide. So getting your ass on the mat and doing a couple like Om Namah Shivayas or whatever, or
whatever's going to do it for you, right?
But to get grounded.
So for me, it's music. So this morning at 3:30, I was listening to Chopin by Arthur Rubinstein, crying my eyes out. So it was like, heart-centered, open, and I just wanted to hear it, so I put it on, and I just was crying. Just release that that place. And the sweetest surrender, there's a sweet spot to being unstuck. And the overarching word I would say for this is faith, is belief in the things not yet seen. And that somewhere in a reality, a vibrational reality, and that's not just a woo-woo term, that is literally a quantum physics scientific term, that there are different dimensions that we're not experiencing with our 5 senses. Of course, there is a 6th sense and maybe even a 7th that we're developing that can touch into like, oh, this is coming. I can feel it. It's on its way. Anxiety can actually be a cue, a beacon to something arriving. And so faith is in that moment where you're like, wow, I really don't understand why this breakup is happening. I don't understand why I was fired, or I don't understand why am I moving so slow? Like this stuck feeling. I had it the other day. I was like at a coffee shop and I was like, I definitely need to go to the DMV. I need to go. But I was like, I'll just wait. And turns out my waiting meant that I waited in a much more pleasant place. And by the time I got there, I only had 45 minutes before I had to go to my next appointment. So it was, I didn't really know what was going on, but the faith, the allowance, being an allowance of, really moved a lot for me. Conversely, if you, I'm one of these people who can get in my action-oriented place and end up spending money that I don't need to spend. And so slowing down is an important component too. And I love what you said. Feel your feelings, ask questions. What is this about? What's the message? What's being done for me? And is this stuck place just a pause? And normally it is. If you're sick or the relationship is not feeling quite right, it's just, there's more information that's on its way. It's going to show up. So I would just say one of the most powerful vehicles that I've ever experienced in
removing blocks, energetic and psychological blocks, is receiving a reading from me. To be humble about it. So essentially what that looks like is facilitating that exact thing you were saying, where you have someone holding the container, where you get to explore like, oh, what does that feel like for me? Or there's even a guide in that, so you don't have to do all the heavy lifting yourself.
Right. Very well said.
And which can be really nice. It can actually relax the nervous system, so you get more information that comes through. Sometimes it can just be as simple as that guided meditative sort of space. And above that, though, is also accessing the information from the universe about the person who's sitting across from me, right? Mm-hmm. Like, well, what is this stuckness about? Is it familial? Is it ancestral? Is it an entity? Is it an entity is simply an energy without a body, an identity without a body? Or is there something else there? And we get to go on that explorative journey together.
Yeah, so, let me just say I would encourage people to go to RebeccaFreedom.com, and Rebecca will spell it out later. But it's just like, no, she's not going to give you her phone number right now. Mm-hmm. So you're going to have to go there and go through some sort of intake process. I don't know what it is, but just start there. Mm-hmm. Because one thing that's amazing is I know that she's totally available for people. So as an example, before we got started, her phone rang before she turned off her phone for the podcast. And it was she said, I got to take it. It's one of my clients. So I know that like she's always available. Mm-hmm. That's pretty darn important. Mm-hmm. Because like she said on a previous podcast, like you said, it's just like sometimes you can't wait a week. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah, life happens in real time, and so does my therapy.
Right.
So does the structure of my therapy, and
right.
and also, and it's like the miraculous piece of it, because I sort of, with tongue in cheek, I'm like, I'm a miracle worker. But for me, honestly, the miraculous piece of it is to be able to deliver the exact message people need, mm-hmm. to be able to receive the gift of the shift.
The gift of the shift.
Copyright Rebecca Freedom, 2016. So, again, if you're in that stuck place of wondering, or just that discomfort, that critic that's like, you're never going to make it, or you don't have the capabilities with the future, you better hurry up and better get something locked down, or you're experiencing this just cage of like narcissism, mm-hmm. whether it's your disorder or you're interacting with somebody who's disordered, and you feel this sense of like the oxygen being sucked out of the relationship. Mm-hmm. I'm here for all of those points and more. And you can reach me at RebeccaFreedom.com, REBEKAH freedom.com. I get people what they actually want. And thank you so much for listening.
One last question. Little update on a couple podcasts ago. You have like the touch thing.
Oh, yeah.
Little update on that? Yeah.
So ... Pure touch is a concept that I came up with where after you get out of a relationship, you really need touch, loving touch, and not just creepy brushing against somebody at the bar touch. So the first and possibly only workshop will be held in Encinitas on August 30th at Eve. So it's a limited time engagement because I'm really aware that the space I'm holding is the invitation for people to connect with me one-on-one and to develop and birth miracles into the world. So nice. As much as I love the workshop space, and I do, it will just be a limited time engagement. So I'll make sure that information is posted on my website accordingly, or in and around the town of Encinitas. So thank you so much for asking. And
of course.
Yeah. And we're going to close out our podcast today. Any questions you have, again, please refer them to RebeccaFreedom.com. Be well.